Ready?
As I'll ever be.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fitness Stuff for Normal People podcast. I'm Marianna here as always with Tony, and it is no secret, the fitness industry sucks, period. Whether it's the corrupt multi-billion-dollar supplement and weight loss industry or the endless supply of influencers promoting anything to drive page views. The bottom line is we're not trying to provide just another fitness podcast, but completely change the fitness industry for the better by providing you with the knowledge and tools to give you confidence in applying the best possible training and nutrition into your own life. Where today we'll be discussing 5 of the biggest myths when it comes to weight loss, providing you with the evidence as to why they do not hold true today. Because if you can understand these myths, you'll understand how weight loss and fat loss actually works, making it easier to achieve these goals in your personal life. But before we get started, as always, if you would like to leave us a little 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on, and also on Spotify, you can give us a follow. This allows us to reach even more people, and that's the goal at the end of the day. We want to continue doing this and rise to the top, reach as many people as possible, and keep growing, and this really, really helps. We appreciate it if you've done it already. If not, you can go ahead and take a few seconds to do now.
We actually have a big update as well on the side of our Fitness Stuff Premium. And this is a long time coming because we get so many questions from you guys, not only in the AMA from that premium side, but also in our DMs after each and every episode comes out. And a lot of the time, these questions just require a lot more detailed and thorough response to actually give you what you need, because health is not that simple. To where if you join us now on our premium, you get a bonus episode every single Friday where we do an AMA style episode that provide research behind the questions that you guys actually ask and upvote in that community. We got tangible products like downloads for training programs, nutritional guides, exclusive discounts on services like blood work, research, and Thorne supplements. And just by being a Fitness Stuff member, you get entered in a $300 Legion supplement giveaway every single month. It's just $5 a month. We'll put the show notes down below on where and how to join us over there. And speaking of that giveaway, shout out to Legion, our day ones. I want to highlight actually 2 new products they have coming out this month. The sucrosomial magnesium has dropped. The vitamin D and K drops this week at the time that you are listening to this. And I'm pumped about it because these aren't just normal supplements. I mean, one, we've been talking about magnesium and vitamin D countless times on this show before with how important they are for your athletic performance, reducing blood pressure, blood sugar control, reducing cardiovascular risk, sex hormone production, mood, and so many other benefits. But these are actually special tweaks that they put on these products themselves. The magnesium is a sucrosomial magnesium, a type of magnesium that's been encased in sucresters, or a type of fatty acid which increases the bioavailability of that magnesium in your body to be used at a higher level than other common forms on the market, like magnesium oxide, biglycinate. That's the most common one you'll see at the store. The vitamin D and K, which is coming out this week, is actually also enforced in a form of fatty acid to increase absorption. If you listen to our vitamin D episode that we did a few weeks ago, which I still think is my favorite one to date, vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, meaning it needs dietary fat to be absorbed and used in the body in all those important functions. So if you're not having a high amount of dietary fat with that meal or in your diet as a total, you're probably not absorbing and using the vitamin D, and it could result in those lowered levels. So this supplement actually helps fix that, even if you don't have high dietary fat. If you want to try them out, you get 20% off your first order or double points every order after that if you use code FSPOD, FSPOD at checkout, and we'll put the link to that in our show notes down below. And we have a monster giveaway announcement to finish off the month of May. Now, you guys have heard us talk about the Strong Inside for the past few weeks, and I think even months now, with the goal really of just sharing the impact complete proteins from milk can have on our health, no matter your age or stage of life. And just like what we aim to do with this podcast, the Strong Inside really is just there to provide you with accurate information to make informed choices about which proteins you are choosing and which proteins from milk are right for you and your health.
And this month, the Strong Inside is hosting an insane giveaway, one in which you'll receive a Peloton Tread Ultimate Package with all of its accessories. So that's the biggest component there. A 2-month supply of protein bars, a 2-month supply of protein powder, a BlendJet, branded sweat towels, and protein recipe card. To enter, you got to head on over to the link that is down in our show notes, and you can enter the code FITSTUFF for 5 additional entries to increase your chances of winning. I know we got a few messages last week that the code wasn't working, but the code is up to date and all set. should be working for those 5 additional entries. So if you already tried the code and it didn't work, you can go in and try again to get those extra entries.
Y'all realize this is
I'm
the
excited.
goat of treadmills. If you need something at home, and what is cool about Peloton, because I know we have a love-hate with like classes, things like that, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's super good for consistency, and they actually can lead you through classes on the massive screen that's on your Peloton tread, which is cool. So if you have a hard time, or you have like a gym in the long distance, or like we're going to talk about even today in other ways of increasing your overall metabolic rate, even just getting some steps in, things like that. If you have a tread in your home, let alone a $3,500 one, might make life a little bit easier.
Yes, that constant reminder too, that you're like, oh, well, it is right there.
And I mean, you'll be fabulous. It's Peloton. This is no knockoff freaking brand. But that's through the month of May. So submit it down below. All right. Now, top 5. And we've got some runner up here. All right. We got some runner up for top 5, but the top 5 weight loss myths. And this is big because what you said in the intro, I completely agree with, right? Myths aren't just like fun to dispel. They're not. And this is why so many people love attaching this, because if you're a coach, if you are someone who's personally trying to lose fat, to lean out, just to improve your health, whatever it is, if you can understand how weight loss and how fat loss actually works in the body, it'll just give you more confidence in doing what's right, because you know what you're doing is right, instead of guessing what's right, what's wrong, what's going all over the place. It just gives you confidence. And if you have confidence in something, it just makes it that much easier to stick to, in my opinion. Don't you agree? Like if you know you're doing the right thing, it's easier to do it rather than kind of second guessing yourself if you're wasting time or not.
Yeah, I actually just had a meeting with one of my clients yesterday. Such a gem, right? Went to a doctor's appointment, and this individual has been losing 1.5 pounds consistently every single week, has been doing great. And his doctor told him he should be at like the 3-pound rate of weight loss a week, and that he needs to move more, eat less, right? And it's like, we wonder why these myths exist, and there's a plethora of reasons as to why, but there's such a deeply rooted misunderstandings and misconceptions on such a personal topic. And I think that's people find community over the misconceptions. It's a sound thing to do, right? It makes sense. Weight loss is a very personal journey. And if you're struggling with it, having a community that is facing the same struggles, it is very easy to draw conclusions as to why things may be happening, although sometimes these conclusions aren't completely accurate. But I find that's how it can spread like wildfire. It is such a personal topic, and
it sucks that it comes from doctors too, which I think people are slowly coming around to the idea, not just to blindly trust someone off of their title anymore, right? Like just because you have a PhD doesn't mean it was a PhD in what they're giving advice on. And I mean, same thing, right? You shouldn't blindly trust a personal trainer because they have a CPT. You shouldn't blindly trust a doctor because they have a PhD. You shouldn't blindly trust, you should make
anyone.
Yeah. You shouldn't trust anything based on one piece of information, right? You should make a more educated decision, right? You should actually problem solve and kind of go through it. And I think that's the hard thing, especially I wish I could slap that doctor in the face. If someone's losing 1.5 pounds, one of the best, I mean, that's like the perfect freaking rate for most people. That's even on the higher
end.
Exactly. And they're like, you need to go faster. I would like freaking slap that dude.
Yeah. And the other thing too was you also said you should stop trying to preserve muscle. Like if you lost muscle, you would lose weight faster. Tony,
Doctor of the year.
Doctor
of the year, ladies and gentlemen. Doctor of the freaking year. That was actually, okay, total side note too, because that was one of my, even though it was silly, because I know, same thing, like some doctors can give great advice, some terrible.
Yeah.
That was one of my gave my little inner child a little hug. When I was growing up, I think this was a couple years ago when I was going to a new primary care, and they were actually asking me for weight loss advice, gym advice, stuff like that. I'm like, did my doctor just ask me for advice on how to be? I don't know. That just tickled me a little bit, because I was like, holy crap, I've known this for so long, but that just helped it out. But it is tough because it's encased in a lot of these things, and a lot of myths exist for a lot of different reasons. You can't just pinpoint one. I mean, we did this, one of our first episodes ever was problems in the fitness industry, where we talked about why these exist. And there's logical fallacies that goes into it. There's things like this where who's giving the advice is a major problem. And there's also just, I think, honestly, a lack of understanding. If you can understand the principles, like we've talked about in this podcast before, if you can understand how fat loss works, myths aren't that easy to create,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to understand that first principle. So we're going to go through these 5 myths. And I don't know if they're in any particular order, even though number 1, I think we want to cover first because it bleeds into almost everything. That's more of a principle one. But these are all going to hopefully give you a perfect picture on how to navigate this. And I think if you're a coach too, even more so how to navigate this with clients, because a lot of these clients and a lot of people have these preconceived notions in their head that they might not consciously think they know, but they are living their life in accordance with.
Yeah.
And if they're doing that, that's when you kind of see these intersections where it's hard to get a new training program to stick. It's hard to get a dieting method to stick because there's these truths that just kind of live in their heads that they don't even know that are shaping it. So this will be a fun one to jump into.
Before we get into these myths, it's important to really understand at a basic level how weight loss actually works. So I like to think of this in terms of an analogy that one of my professors gave to my class back, seems like so long ago, but it really stuck with me. So thinking about your bank account, right? Income adds to your account balance, expenses take away from it. If you spend more than you make, your balance obviously goes down. Then you might have all of the little nuances in between that would cause your balance to either go up or decrease, like bills, debt, childcare, the state in which you live in for taxes, lack of financial literacy. There are many things that maybe you control and some maybe you don't have as much control over. Looking at weight loss, it works in almost the same way, right? You consume calories through food, drink, and you burn calories through exercise, digestion, daily movement, and just being alive. If you utilize more calories than you take in or spend more money than you make, you will lose weight. And that is such a basic explanation. It's a lot more convoluted than that. The majority of people, there are many nuances in between that contribute to why one may be losing or gaining weight, like your sleep-wake cycle, hormones, genetics, being in a walkable city, the time you have, maybe you have kids, your education level. Again, many factors that maybe you can control and some maybe you don't have much control over. So I think a lot of the times, especially on social media and the fitness space, you don't see people talking about these nuances. And it is the concept at baseline can be simple, but these nuances make it much more complicated. I think that's where a lot of these myths arise from.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Simple, not easy. And for those, if you're brand new listening to this too, that's what we're basing this episode off of, that we know that fact is in place, that a calorie deficit takes place. But what I love about the bank account analogy is because a lot of people might hear something like that before, but the nuance part is so massive. There are so many things that can influence calories in and calories out they're not so simple, that can make it seem like calories in, calories out is not working, or that it's just not working for you, when a lot of the time it's just these nuances that we can't see. And that's because these myths exist a lot of the time, which is a perfect lead into it. Now we're going to start with myth number one, that weight loss is the same thing as fat loss. That weight loss is the same thing as fat loss. That is the myth, because these two things can be completely separate. What we think we want is weight loss, but what we really want is fat loss. Yes. And that's important to make, because over the next few myths that we're going over, we're going to tell they have two completely different routes in getting there. Two very different routes. So if you're going towards weight loss, you're probably taking the wrong route. Yeah. If you're going to fat loss, you'll probably get what you want. Now, I know I've talked about this a lot on my platforms. You have too. But we want to break this down because it's massively important to understand for the rest of the myths that can be a little bit higher level. So you have to understand this piece and not just like, yeah, I've heard that before. You've got to understand it. Okay. Losing weight simply just means the scale is going down. That's all it means. The scale is going down. Doesn't mean if the weight is coming from body fat, coming from lean body mass like muscle, could be water weight, could be a lot of different things. That just means the scale is going down. And that can be from fat, but that doesn't mean it's exclusively from fat. And we've talked about how important communication is, especially in defining what your goal is in the first place. And I mean, you can know this too if you ever work with a new client. But when someone comes in with a super fuzzy what and why, like what is your goal? I want to lose some weight. Why? For a vacation this summer, right? That's a big difference between a person who comes in with a clear and defined goal with a why. I want to lose 5 to 6% body fat. I want to retain my muscle and actually get stronger. And I want to feel more energy and less fatigue through the day while improving my sleep, whatever. A super clearly defined set of goals. And then the why is more internal than external, but it's the same thing, because if your goal is just to lose weight, you could do it completely unsustainably. You could do it to where it rebounds. You could do it in all the wrong ways, but that's not going to equal success. Where fat loss is more talking about what usually leads to long-term lasting success, meaning you're losing body fat. That doesn't always mean you're losing weight, but you're losing body fat. You're holding on to muscle tissue. You're holding all to lean body mass, which is going to keep you healthy, keep your metabolism raised. That's the most important part. Because if you just strictly go for weight loss and you go low carb, slash your calories, super high cardio, the scale is going to drop faster than you've ever seen it before, for as long as you can stay consistent, which might only be a week or two, because it usually is not very sustainable. But you're losing countless pounds of water weight, which is, again, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy for this. Something that appears, it's kind of like smoke and mirrors, something that appears good. And then when you look past like what it actually is, you're like, oh, this sucks. Yeah. Do you know a good analogy for that or no?
I don't.
We'll go with smoke and mirrors, whatever it is. But it's like, it'll show you an initial sign that, hey, this is working. But if you're dropping water weight, you're going to feel like crap. If you're losing muscle and strength, it's only going to end in a terrible rebound, which most of the time ends in weight regain. And you just do this stupid cycle for every 3 months until you just eventually quit. I feel like that's what it usually results in, where fat loss is a little bit different. And those two different goals have two different approaches in how you best get there. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's how we kind of see it. And I know you go through this and we talk about this a lot, but I mean, even just based on water weight, how much that can change in a day. That cracks me up.
Yeah. So oftentimes when you see people coming on the internet raving about, maybe it's the ketogenic diet, you'll see this happen a lot, or it's the new poppy drink and the new probiotic, or the new detox drink that made you lose 7 pounds in a week, or diet that caused you to lose 10 pounds in 5 days. This, what seems like drastic weight loss in a short period of time, if that is actually true, what that can be attributed to is water weight loss. And really, I think knowing this and reminding yourself of this, again, it sometimes is hard for people to believe, right? Because you have this enticing idea of losing weight quickly and you want to try it, right? But this weight loss quickly should be an instant red flag, because what is happening is people are losing water weight. Why is that happening? It's because in the initial stages of weight loss, or say even if you're taking something that has more of a laxative effect, this is even more basic than what I'm about to explain. If you're taking anything or going on some sort of diet that has a laxative effect, you're losing water weight, and you can lose a lot of it because you're going to the bathroom. But then with more of these diets, like the ketogenic diet, if you see a lot of weight loss very early on, in the beginning stages, you're losing your glycogen stores. So that's what your body is going to turn to. It's the storage form of glucose. That's what you lose first. And every gram of glycogen is bound to 3 grams of water. So that's why you will often see this rapid weight loss on these maybe very high fat, low carb diets, or extreme diet, or even if you have a lot more weight, so to say, to lose. Some people will lose it a little bit faster in the beginning and then plateau. Your water weight, though, is constantly changing in your body. Just as you can quickly lose it, you can quickly gain it back. And it also depends on so many different factors, the amount of water that you hold in your body. It can change based off of sleep changes, hydration or dehydration, the time of day it is, the time since your last meal, your cortisol levels, if you have more frequent bowel movements, right? So this can change constantly. And you can look at that as a big distinguishment between water weight loss and fat loss. Is that is not the case with fat loss. That is not going to fluctuate often. You're not going to see these rapid 24-hour changes. That's not going to be reflected on the scale if it is fat loss. So I think that that's something really to keep in mind, especially during a time where you're bombarded with these extreme weight loss tactics.
Yeah, you can't gain or lose weight fast at all. We should almost dedicate a whole freaking episode to how to use the scale, because the scale is massively important for understanding trends, for understanding long-term if you're in a calorie deficit, for things like that. It is terrible. It tells you absolutely nothing on a day-to-day scale. It tells you nothing. You know, like you can fluctuate. I've seen people fluctuate up to 8 to 10 pounds based on purely water weight in a day.
Oh, I fluctuate so much.
It's ridiculous. I mean, even the first 20 minutes of when I wake up, I can gain and lose 3-4 pounds each direction just based on what I'm doing. Eating, using the restroom, going to the gym, whatever it is, it goes up and down. So what we're trying to say here is for most people, 99% of people, you don't want weight loss. You want fat loss. And making that distinction is very, very important. You want fat loss. You don't want weight loss. And even to the point of gaining and losing fat, this thing takes time. Losing fat takes even longer, but even gaining fat, even if you go through a massive 10,000 calorie challenge, and I did a review of research like this, I think over my Instagram page, you can't even expect to gain a single pound of body fat in one day. Even if you ate a 10,000 calorie challenge based on all the changes that take place, right? You can't gain or lose that so fast. So when you wake up in the morning and you're 2 pounds heavier or 2 pounds lighter than the day before, that almost means nothing in the terms of weight or fat loss, because a day-to-day scale, the scale doesn't matter on a day-to-day basis. It just doesn't. So when we want to focus on fat loss and weight loss, and here's the hard part that you actually brought up in this, it's way harder to measure, because usually the scale, if you're losing weight, is a positive reinforcement. I even get this someday. If I'm trying to lose fat and trying to lose weight, if I step on the scale and if it's 1.5 pounds lighter than it was the day before, a little dopamine goes off in my brain. It's positive reinforcement. It feels good. Even though I know I didn't lose 1.5 pounds of fat, that's not what I actually wanted. It still is like a positive reinforcer, which is super helpful for weight loss. And we've talked about that. The more closely you can define like metrics of like how you're succeeding, the easier your path's going to be, because you're like, okay, I'm making progress. It's easy to keep going, but fat loss can be a lot harder sometimes, because there's days or even weeks sometimes where it's going to look like you're moving backwards, even though on the inside you're moving forwards.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part.
So if you had someone, say a new client or just someone who was looking for some advice, how could they tell if they're losing fat versus losing water weight? Are there any metrics they could use to track fat loss?
This one's tough, because I think the first thing people realize, and this is whenever we do anything where we talk about body fat percentage, I mean, we both agree there's not really a very accurate way to measure body fat percentage, not even just once, but especially over a method of progress. And what would you say the most accurate method of tracking body fat percentage is?
I was going to say there are accurate methods, but not that the average person has access to. So a DEXA scan is accurate. How many of those are in the world? I'm not sure.
They usually have to schedule them in like a citywide location. Like I know there might be 1 or 2 in the city of San Diego, which is huge. And those are definitely more accurate. They still vary by a few percent.
They can still vary. The most accurate, and a bod pod. There's also water displacement methods. But I would say then looking at ones that you could potentially have access to, there is skin fold tests that measure your body fat percentage. However, that has a lot of human error involved, and you have to have someone that is, I think you have to go through a test to get a certification to be able to do that. It's not something that anyone
You don't just
can
go pinch your skin. Yeah, it's not as not as easy as just pinching the skin.
Oh my God, we had to do
skin
fold testing in our exercise physiology lab, and it's tough. It is tough, but it is better than another form that I would say you could find in a lot of gyms, which is the bioelectrical impedance.
That one kills me.
That is honestly, I would say you're better off. This is my personal thoughts on it. I'd say you're better off just not even using that, because it can be so inaccurate that it can lead you in the wrong direction.
I tell people to not use them all the time. And not only bioelectrical impedance analysis, that BIA, it's what you use on like if you have a smart scale at home. It uses something called BIA, right? Bioelectrical impedance analysis. And it's also used not just on your smart scale that costs $20 on Amazon, but those handheld devices and even those $3,000 to $4,000 in-body machines use BIA, which can be a big problem, because BIA is a really cool idea. I love the idea behind it. It is wildly inaccurate. So even those, the in-body machines, right? The ones that you stand on, you hold the metal plates to.
Yeah, you have
at the gym.
They have them at gyms a lot of the time.
Yeah, they print out your body analysis. You're like, holy crap, this is the coolest thing in the world. Hate to break your heart, not accurate. at all. So, because how it really works is it shoots little electric currents through your body and measures how conductive your body composition is, essentially. And this can be done because muscle is about 70% water. And what do we know about water? It conducts electricity super well. Body fat is a lot less water. Body fat only holds about 10% water, so it does not conduct that electric current very well. So you would essentially measure the speed that these currents take to get back from plate to plate. This sounds really good in theory, but what do we know about electricity? What do you know about it? Electricity chooses the path of least resistance most of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually muscle skipping over fat. It has more water. It's a lot easier to travel through. So why would you travel through something harder? It just doesn't make sense. So that's one big problem with it. The other, they use a calculation, which if you look at it is extremely flawed in and of itself on how they actually calculate from the results they get. So these can be off anywhere from, I've seen 7 to 10%, even more on measuring it, because this can go for how much water you've drank that day, how much you've sweat, how much sleep you've had. So many different things can influence what this tells you. I mean, I even went in, I think it said I was at 4.5% body fat. 4.5%.
Dude, you would be
shredded. I'm like, am I ready to walk on stage? Am I good to compete? Go for IFBB Pro? I'm like, I'm freaking way fluffier than that. I'm closer to 15%. I'm fluffy. I'm not 4 point. The 4.5 killed me. And the doctor was like, oh, you're really healthy. You have low body fat percentage. I'm like, that's kind of
That
funny.
is so funny.
So these methods aren't really realistic because that's the most realistic one you could get at home because you're probably not going to be accurate enough or good enough to use a skin fold test. You can't do that. So I wouldn't say measuring it's that important, but there's ways that you can tell if you're losing fat versus losing lean body mass, like muscle. One of the big ones, and this is why I use it with almost every one of my clients, is weekly progress photos from the front, side, and back. And I've seen some really cool videos of people who even do this on a daily basis, which I don't recommend because it takes a lot of time, but it was really cool because you see someone on a daily basis, their body day to day looks nearly identical and sometimes even looks worse. Sometimes you're more bloated, you didn't sleep well the night before, you might not have a sick pump from whatever workout you just did. The weekly images aren't going to differ that much, but over time you can start to tell, oh, I'm leaning out.
Scale might not reflect that.
Exactly. Especially if you're in recomp phase, the scale might not move at all, but if you're getting leaner, losing body fat percentage, gaining muscle, that's a huge piece of it. The second piece is by still looking at your weight, but if you are getting stronger, if your strength is increasing in the gym, that is a massive sign that you are not losing muscle, right? That's one of the biggest things to look out for, red flags, if you are losing weight, and how to tell if you're losing weight too quickly is if your strength is decreasing, that typically means you're losing muscle along with it. And it might be a really good point to switch directions. So if you're gaining strength or maintaining strength, while even the scale is not moving or the scale is moving down, that is a phenomenal sign that you are losing body fat and not losing muscle. That's a huge sign.
And then I would say just one more too is looking at your, still using the scale, but not judging yourself based off of these day-to-day changes, looking at your weight changes over a longer period of time. So taking a look at the past month and saying, on average, was I losing around half a pound to a pound? It really depends on how much, I would say, weight you have to lose and your specific goals. But was I consistent with that on average on a week-to-week basis? Even if I had some fluctuations here, honestly, the more time, the better. Even if you had like a 2-month trend to look at, because that is where you're going to see more of a reflection in fat loss. And it can account for those days where maybe I was retaining a lot more water weight, or maybe I was a lot lighter on this day. Never judging yourself on these day-to-day changes in the scale, but looking at this over time. Because again, you are going to have periods of time where the scale may not change at all, but it's still important to have it as one metric to look at. But that's really where the progress photos come in and can be really helpful. But
because just because you're not losing weight does not mean you're not losing fat. And a good tool for that, I know for people listening too, I think we've mentioned it once on the show, but you can use an app called Happy Scale. Have we talked about that?
I think so, yeah.
It might have been a while ago, but you can use an app called Happy Scale where you still enter your daily weigh-ins. But anyone who's taken daily weigh-ins, whether to gain weight, lose weight, to anything, realizes that it goes up and down. It is a roller coaster. And like, again, those daily weigh-ins, you can take zero important data from a day-to-day weigh-in. But what the Happy Scale app does, what the app does, is it doesn't only give you what your daily weight is, but what your 2-week trending weight is. Meaning over the past 2 weeks, are you trending down? So you could have gained a pound. You could have gained a pound from yesterday to this morning, but your trending weight could say, oh, you're down 1.5 pounds, or you're down 0.5 pounds. And that's the important part, because it's that visual feedback of, that's the important part. It's the reinforcement of, oh, I'm doing the right thing. Even though the scale went up today, I'm still losing weight or losing fat. So I think the Happy Scale app is a huge tool for those listening. If you're going through it, and like, especially if you have a rough relationship with the scale, because it can be, that's a huge one to go into it. So I think that puts a bow on numero uno, right? Numero uno, that fat loss is not the same thing as weight loss. We want fat loss. Weight loss can come with that. That can be on the side. What we think we want is weight loss, but what we really want is fat loss. Yes. And that's important to make, because over the next few myths that we're going over, we're going to tell they have 2 completely different routes in getting there. 2 very different routes. So if you're going towards weight loss, you're probably taking the wrong route. Yeah. If you're going to fat loss, you'll probably get what you want, which leads us into number 2.
Number 2 is this idea that you have damaged your metabolism, or your body is in starvation mode. We've definitely touched on this a few times, but we couldn't leave it out. And I think the 2 definitely coexist together. So metabolic damage refers to this hypothetical state where you are supposedly burning fewer calories than you should be based on your body weight and activity levels. So I think it's important to understand what metabolism is. So your metabolism is the collection of physical and chemical processes your body uses to produce, maintain, and destroy material substances, and to make energy available. It is entirely complex. It is all the processes and reactions in your body going on at a single time, essentially to allow you to live. If your metabolism was damaged or broken, which people will sometimes say, you'd have a lot more pressing issues to deal with rather than not being able to lose weight. Because, and I know that people aren't referring to all of these other processes. When they're talking about metabolic damage, people are really referring to maybe their basal metabolic rate, so the calories that they expend at rest, or the calories that they expend during exercise, or some people will say how they process calories is different, which doesn't really make much sense. But I don't like how people refer to it as this whole, your just metabolism is broken, because then you're kind of dead. You would have a lot of other coexisting issues that you'd have to deal with. So people in whose bodies are going through this state of metabolic damage, people will also say that they're in a period of starvation mode.
That's the big one. Starvation mode's big.
Yes. So that can happen from saying, I've been in a calorie deficit for too long. I'm not eating enough. I'm eating so little calories. My body is in starvation mode. I can't lose weight. Say that, and it doesn't, like,
just look at it like that. It's like eating, I can't lose weight because I'm eating too little. If you say it out like that, it just doesn't make sense. I can't lose weight because I'm eating too little. No one ever has not lost weight by eating too little. That's not a real thing.
Yeah. And I don't want to, I start to smile when I feel like I'm being rude. I don't know why, because then it makes me look like I am more rude, but I'm trying to be conscious of other people. So when I'm trying to be empathetic, I'll laugh or smile, and it's the worst because it's the least empathetic thing. But
like a Sour Patch Kid.
I understand people genuinely believe this and are really trying to lose weight. And this, I think, is one of the best examples of how a weight loss myth can come to be, is you are holding on to, oh my goodness, there is this scientific explanation as to why I'm not the problem, right? And this isn't to say that people are the problem, but you can hold on to this greater problem that just, you can lean on it. Oh, there is a reason why. And my hard work hasn't just been for nothing. My body is compromised. Yeah. And that is a personal experience that a lot of people will share together that is actually a misconception.
I think it's a reason to not want to dive deeper into figuring out the problem. Because I think a
Yes.
lot of the people that do say that truly do believe it. They're not lying. They
Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
it because it's usually, and this is usually coming from people who will crash diet where they say that they're eating 1,200 calories, which they are, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They
Mm-hmm.
starve themselves, where the name starvation will come. They starve themselves, but then they don't realize that results in binging, overeating on the weekends, massive.
Yeah.
So maybe on a
And
day-to-day scale, they're starving themselves, but not over time. And
yeah.
that's how
And
fat loss works.
I just wanted to make sure I said this before. This myth is not talking about people who do have hormonal imbalances or say like hypothyroidism, and they do genuinely have these diseases that affect hormone production and how much energy their body maybe burns. And there are there are sound diseases and hormonal states that you can be in that can affect how your body loses weight. So I didn't want to discount
Yeah, well,
that.
but that's important, but it's also not as big of an issue as I think people think it is. Like
Yes.
they
Yeah.
hear hypothyroidism, which I think has the largest impact, but even that I don't think is over 20% of a downregulation in
Hmm.
BMR at the most, like at the worst case of it. So
Yeah.
things can definitely influence how many calories your body burns, but I think they make it not ideal for weight loss, but it's not enough to make you incapable of losing weight. I think that's the most
Yeah.
important thing to understand. So no matter
Hmm.
what's going on, and this is a lot of the time self-diagnosed, which comes from the starvation mode, and it's from a lot of people who just will think in their heads like, I am starving myself. I'm so hungry. It's ruining my relationships, my sleep, my everything, Monday through Thursday or a few days a week, and then binge or overeat and don't account for all the calories that they're taking in overall.
Yeah.
And I think this really brings us into kind of a big study of where this is kind of observed. And it's not even, I mean, not a study, but we've talked about this before, the Minnesota starvation experiment, where the study begins by starving people, literally, for real, starving people, right? And we brought this up. What episode was, I forget which episode we talked about this in, but I think it was when this topic
I don't
came
know.
up of it. But it was an experiment that started in 1944 as the end of World War II was coming. And it actually had a purpose behind it. And its purpose was to discover the healthiest way to help millions of people the millions of starving people in Europe return to a normal body weight after the war. Because there was millions of starving people after this war. And they actually wanted to figure out, okay, can we just give them all the food in the world, or is that going to cause more damage than good? So scientists recruited, I'm doing quote unquote, scientists recruited 36 normal weight volunteers. We'll do another quote, volunteers. Scientists recruited 36 normal weight volunteers. And essentially, these people had a choice of either being shipped off to the front of the lines or doing this experiment. So it was like, okay, volunteers, that's a generous way of putting it. But essentially, what they wanted these individuals to do is they wanted to replicate the conditions of your average POW camp during the war. So they had them do several hours of manual labor every single day, march 22 miles per week on a diet that provided about 50% of their average daily energy expenditure. 50%. Literal starving. And this was for freaking 6 months. For 6 months, right? And this was, I mean, so bad. People are like, how is this even real? This was so bad that some participants had almost starved to death, and one even cut several of his fingers off just to finish early. Like that's what ended up, that was the only way out. So he cut his fingers off to get out of the study early.
Yeah,
Now,
this is an unethical study. Nowadays, this would never be done, just so everyone knows.
not yet, maybe with AI, but after that 6 month period, right? And this was to really observe like what happens to the human metabolism through starvation, like true observed starvation. These people couldn't go binge on the weekends. These people were essentially controlled in a POW camp. All right. There was no room for error here. But after 6 months, these participants on average lost 25% of their total body weight, which if starvation mode was a real thing, they couldn't have lost that weight, right? Because they were starving. Their body wanted to hold on to everything it had. They couldn't have lost weight, but they did. They lost a quarter of their total body weight, which is massive. It's huge. It's huge. Their BMRs were only underperforming at the end of the study by about 20% from what was expected. So it did downregulate. And I think that's an important note too, which we'll talk about. There is such a thing as metabolic adaptation, but again, it does not have as big of an effect as I think most people realize.
Yeah.
But immediately after the study, their BMRs were only underperforming by about 20%. And after a 12-week recovery protocol or period, their BMRs had pretty much returned back almost to 100% again. So just to put this in layman's term, of people like, oh my God, how, like 20%, that's it. If your BMR, and this is not your total energy expenditure, this is just the BMR, which accounts for about 70%. If your BMR was 1,800 calories per day, and then you just played concentration camp for 6 months, right? You just wanted to play a little game, throw yourself into concentration camp for 6 months, and then recovered, your basal metabolic rate would then be at a little bit over 1,600 calories per day. So is it ideal? No, but it's not enough to make you incapable of losing weight. And that's the whole purpose of this idea. And that's where I'm saying, like, there are metabolic adaptations, but I think a lot of coaches in this industry, I see online too, overplay that word and it sounds sciencey. Oh, metabolic adaptation. But it's like, your metabolism can downregulate, but not to a degree that makes it impossible to lose weight. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. So this brings us to number 3. So top 5 today. Number 1 is that weight loss and fat loss are the same thing. They are not. Number 2 is starvation mode, or the idea that if you don't eat enough, your body will go into starvation mode and hold on to extra body weight, body fat, making it impossible for you to lose weight. That is a myth. Number 3, that a calorie deficit means eat less food, right? That a calorie deficit equals eat less food, because it's a myth. It doesn't. Oversimplifying this times a million of what a calorie deficit is, right? Because a calorie deficit, there's 2 parts to that equation. To create one, you have to have less calories coming in than going out, right? So there's 2 parts to that. The calories in, yes, through food, but there's also the calories out. And I don't think enough people take into account what changes they can make in their lifestyle to increase their calories out, not just starving themselves, eating less, because your metabolism is broken up into 4 parts that we've talked about before. Did we even do a full episode on TDEE or no?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. If not, we've probably broken the freaking record on this one. But your TDEE, or total daily energy expenditure, is broken up into 4 parts. So the calories you burn in a day either come from exercise, activity thermogenesis, or EAT. So just through your workouts, exercise. That only accounts for about 5, 10, maybe 15% if you're going hard in the gym for like 2 to 3 hours. That is the smallest piece of your metabolism. The second is TEF, or the thermic effect of food, which accounts for about 10 to 15% of the calories you burn. That is literally just the energy it takes to digest the food you eat through the day. And we'll talk more about that later. There is NEAT, which we've been big fans of before. The most malleable piece, of the one that you could usually increase the most, but your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So the calories you burn through movement that is not exercise. So we include, and this is up for debate, but we include step count, fidgeting, standing versus sitting, just the movement that I'm even doing with my arms right now. You're moving and I'm moving for probably a good awake 16, 17 hours a day like this. That accounts for a lot more than the hour of exercise I did this morning. And then your largest piece, your basal metabolic rate, your BMR or RMR, which accounts for about 50 to 70% of the calories you burn in a day. This is just just functions keeping you alive. Your heart beating, your brain thinking, your lungs breathing, your basal metabolic rate. And here's the cool thing that I don't think people take into account is you can increase how many calories you're burning in a day massively without going to the gym. And just for an example, and this is what I wanted to kind of highlight here. For an example, you could eat the same amount of food and be at, let's say, your calorie maintenance, make a few changes, and then be in a massive 500 to 600 calorie deficit, right? Without going to the gym and without eating less. For example, let's say you are more sedentary, right? Let's say you get about 3,000 to 4,000 steps a day, and you increase that to about 9,000 steps a day. And I just did that for math's sake. That's about a 15 to 20 minute walk after each meal. Just adding in your day. If you just sprinkle a couple walks through your day, it's about an extra 300 calories total. If you have a low protein diet and you increase it to a higher protein diet, just because protein's thermic effect can be 3 to 10 times larger than carbs and fats, meaning how many calories it takes to break down that piece of food, right? So if you have a lower protein diet to a higher, you can burn on average around 50 to 100 calories per day if it's a lower end to a higher end protein diet. And then here's some big pieces I don't think people think about is how malleable their BMR is. And this doesn't happen on a day-to-day basis, but over time, things like controlling your sleep and your stress, these are massively underthought of when it comes to weight loss. right? Researchers at Ohio State University found that subjects who reported one or more stressors, major stressors during the prior 24 hours, burned 104 fewer calories than non-stress subjects over the course of 24 hours. So having a major stressful day-to-day event, or I know a lot of people hold on to stress like it's their job, can massively suppress how many calories you're burning. And same thing goes with sleep, right? This research out of the University of Pennsylvania showed that after logging 4 hours of sleep for 5 nights in a row, subjects' BMR slowed by nearly 3% from the start of this. 3% on their BMR. So that's another 50 to 100 calories per day. That's every single day. If you take care of your sleep, another 100 if you can really manage your stress, and you're constantly stressed right now. Let's even go past here. If you can hold on to and build some lean muscle mass, right? Yes, muscle is more metabolically active than fat. I think some of the old myths were like 20 to 50 times more metabolically active, which is completely wrong. It's anywhere from like 2 to 3 times more metabolically active, right? Meaning at rest, it takes about 2 to 3 times more calories to just maintain, right? For example, 1 pound of muscle will burn about 4.5 to 7 calories a day at rest, where 1 pound of fat, there goes my dog, where 1 pound of fat will burn around 2 to maintain per day, right? So if you can increase, let's even just say over the course of a year or two, 20 pounds of lean muscle mass, that's an extra 80, 100 calories you're burning at rest just every single day, 365 days a year, right? And then we'll go to one other piece, another non-exercise aspect, your hydration, which we can't put an exact measurement on this, but if you're dehydrated, your NEAT is going down. You're not going to be moving, fidgeting up and around as much as you would be if you were hydrated. And so does your training intensity. So the actual calories you're burning in the gym are going to be likely much higher. If you're hydrated, you're going to burn more through the day. We're not going to even include that. But just from the added muscle mass, sleep, stress, protein, and steps per day, you're burning anywhere between another 300 to 700 calories per day without adding a workout and without eating less. That's huge.
Yeah. And for some people, like, this is a whole lifestyle, right? We're not saying implement every single one of these like right off the bat. That's so unrealistic and can be really difficult. And it's an incremental approach, but that's looking at these lifestyle changes you can make. Diet is really important, and it is effective. If you just wanted to change one thing and you were able to do it, you can. It's not to say that you can't, but people don't like to be hungry. People shouldn't be eating in extreme deficits, but are, and it's kind of where you can see it nip you in the butt. So
big time.
If you are in that camp of, I want to be able to eat a little bit more food and also make these other lifestyle changes that are going to have benefits beyond my weight loss. Yeah, that's definitely, you should include these if you want that sustainability factor and just overall health improvement as well.
Yeah. And these were just examples on, and usually you're probably not lacking in every single one of these areas either. Yeah. But just to show people, like, it doesn't just mean eat less food. Because I think when people hear the word calorie deficit, they just think, okay, I got to starve myself. I got to eat less. And like you said, it's like, if you can stick to eating less, that's going to be the number one thing that is going to help you lose weight, 100%.
Yeah.
But let's be really honest. What are the odds you can stick to eating significantly less food for longer than a week, a month? Like how long fat loss actually takes.
I have clients that are on a weight loss journey, and I put them in around like a 250 calorie deficit. And then we're also working on getting them from 2,000 steps a day. Again, it's an incremental approach, but to 10,000 steps a day. They think I'm crazy because they're like 250. That's it. I'm like, going from sedentary to actively moving throughout the day. Give me time and let's see how this plays out. Yeah,
it's massive. So it's really just to highlight and say, okay, like, it doesn't just mean eat less food, but look at your lifestyle the other 23 hours a day that you're not in the gym and see where you can improve your sleep, your stress, how much lean body mass you're carrying, which would require you to lift weights and not just do cardio, which is going to lead us into another myth.
Yeah.
You want to hit that one?
This is also why a lot of people, just side note, like, this is why a lot of people hit a weight loss plateau or are not successful with their weight loss because they're only focusing on the diet piece and not addressing all of the other factors.
It's not a diet, bro. It's a lifestyle.
I hate
but for real, it's like, that's the difference between the people that are like, if you see two people who start a weight loss journey today and the person who's going to be successful, not just in a month or two, but in 2 years, oh, you actually lost weight and kept it off, versus the person who rebounded. Yeah. You're right. That's usually the biggest factor, is their life's going to change, where someone else might be just trying another crash diet or something like that.
Yeah. Going into the next one, This
Number
is
4.
that cardio is better than weightlifting for fat loss, or that you shouldn't be lifting weights if you're trying to lose weight. You should be doing all of this cardio all the time. No. And I think it can tie into, we've talked about this before too, is a lot of the times it will feed into this other myth that weightlifting makes you bulky. So obviously, if I'm trying to lose weight, why would I lift weights? Because that's not what I want. Just doing cardio alone is not great for fat loss. Cardio is something that is good for your cardiovascular endurance, your cardiovascular health. This is not a shitting on cardio, because it's important and it is something that everyone should do, right? Tony, did you want to take this on? I feel like this is something you're like
might as well passionate about. Well, no, because here's the thing that I think most people get mixed up, and it brings us back to myth number 1, because cardio is phenomenal for weight loss. It is phenomenal for weight loss. It's not phenomenal for sustainable fat loss. It's not. So I think that's where this myth really comes from, is because it is really, really good at weight loss, but not fat loss. And it's not great for 2 main reasons for fat loss. 1, it's not building your resting metabolic rate like weight training does. It's not building that engine that's going 24 hours a day. And 2, your body adapts to cardio to reduce calorie expenditure. It adapts to cardio much quicker than it can adapt to weights. When you're in a calorie deficit, the body strives to just increase energy efficiency, right? How good it is at doing things, right? Meaning as time goes on, the less and less energy is needed to continue doing the same workouts. And we've talked about this for popular like workout classes, like Orange Theory, like F45, because you're wearing a calorie burn tracker that will show you on the screen how many calories you're burning. And it might be high once you start, but those trackers don't take into account that metabolic adaptation or you getting more efficient at burning calories through the exercise you're doing, because it's more or less the same way every day. It doesn't take that into account. So I wanted to pull a couple studies that I think we've mentioned here before, but I wanted to pull a couple studies really highlighting exactly what I mean here. And this will make the weight loss versus fat loss thing make a little more sense. And the first one, a ridiculous study done at the University of West Virginia a while ago, but they separated subjects into 2 groups, and both groups were putting into a very low calorie liquid diet so they could control their calorie intake at 800 calories per day. I was like, what the?
I'm dying.
Who's signing up for this? No, 0 chance. And this was for 12 weeks, 12 freaking weeks. So they put these subjects, both groups, on a very low calorie liquid diet of 800 calories a day for 12 weeks. Group 1 was assigned to 3-hour-long weight training sessions per week. Group 2 was assigned to 4-hour-long cardio sessions per week of either walking, biking, or stair climbing. Okay, and they were strictly doing just cardio or just weights. So group 1 was just weights and group 2 was just cardio. Now, at the end of the 12 weeks, group 2, the cardio group, did lose the most weight because they were in a calorie deficit. You can't not be at 800 calories a day. They lost the most weight, but they also lost 9 pounds of lean body mass and muscle, 9 pounds of muscle, and also saw a massive decrease in their resting metabolic rate as well. So it's like, okay, do you think they actually maintain this afterwards? Where group 1, who was still on this very low calorie liquid diet that I do not advise, I don't, right? But group 1, the weight training only group, didn't lose the most weight, but they did lose the most body fat. They lost 0 pounds of lean body mass, 0 pounds of muscle, and their resting metabolic rate actually increased from the start to the end of the study. Actually increased. So that was the massive highlight when you separate these. But again, your cardiorespiratory health is so freaking important.
Yeah.
For your lifespan, longevity, your cardiovascular health, so many different things go into cardiorespiratory fitness. So this is one or the other, but life is usually not black and white. And that's where the second study from Duke University came in and did a little bit of a blend. They added a third group, okay, where group 1 was weight training only, group 2 was cardio only, and they added a third group, which did a combination of both weights and cardio. And after 8 months of this study, so it was a little bit more long and drawn out, group 2, the cardio only group, was the only group to lose muscle out of them. So the combination and just the weight group, neither of them lost muscle. The cardio only group did. And we know how important that is for longevity. Group 3, though, the combination group did lose the most weight and the most fat while also gaining muscle. It wasn't a very significant amount, but they did gain muscle mass from start to the end of this study. So the combination was the most important, but this is really just to highlight that you don't want to just rely on cardio to lose fat. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
Because like we said,
Yeah.
it might result in that short-term weight loss that's going to make you think you're doing things right. But if you're losing muscle, if your resting metabolic rate is slowing down, I promise you 3, 6 months from now, whatever, it's not a forever thing. It's not going to end up how you think it is. And that's the
Mm.
biggest piece of this whole cardio versus weight. Which one's better than the other? They're both important, but having a strong weight training foundation, and I always say 2/3 of your training should come from weights, if not more, and no more than a third from cardio if your goal is to lose fat. But you should not just rely on one or the other, or just rely on cardio, especially with this
Yeah.
one.
And sometimes I've said this before and I'm going to say it again because I have recently gotten someone commenting about how, well, runners are so lean and thin and you can see their muscle definition. This is the classic example. If you guys are familiar, you probably are, with James Smith and the
Yep.
swimmer's body illusion that he has explained before. Professional runners are runners and they are the best at running because that is what their body was born to allow them to do, right? The Michael
Mm-hmm.
Phelps of the world for swimmers. Yes, he probably has this insane diet, and also runners have a cross training program. So you'll see them in the gym as well. They don't just strictly run, or else they'd get really injured and wouldn't have the muscle and strength to allow them to keep going, especially for these really long periods of time, anyways. So people who are the best athletes, right? If you're comparing yourself to them, then you wouldn't be taking into account that some people's athletic potential are rooted within their genetics and their body composition and their
Yeah.
muscle fiber type. That is not a good comparison level. Like,
Yeah.
don't compare yourself to these professional runners. They're professional runners. You're not.
Yeah. The same, like the swimmer's body thing is, yeah, they don't look the way they do because of swimming. They swim because the way they look they do. Same thing for like the professional runners. They
Yeah.
run because the way they look they do. They don't look the way they do because they run.
Yeah. It's the same with Pilates too, which I know people are probably thinking about this, not cardio, but with Pilates, the
Mm-hmm.
Pilates instructor looks that way. She looks that way and she does Pilates.
Shocker. Yeah.
So
It's absolutely huge. Now, this will lead us into numero 5. And here's one that honestly, I think most people, this is one of those preconceived ones where if we walk it out to them, they'll be like, yeah, that makes sense. But I think one that everyone holds as a script in their head. Because how many times
yes.
have I heard this? And I'll tell you this, and how many times have you heard this? Do people come up to you and they're like, you know what? I'm doing everything right. Like I'm eating healthy. I'm doing this. I'm not losing weight. I'm eating healthy. I cut out all the junk food. I'm eating clean, but I'm not losing weight. What's myth number 5?
That eating healthy equals eating for weight loss. And this is one I would say, being in the nutrition field, has gotten under my skin for quite some time too, just in the personal judgments people make towards someone who they know is in the nutrition space. Like I still get all the time from relatives, aunts, uncles, family. If I'm eating something, whether I'm dipping a piece of bread in oil or having a cookie, oh my goodness, like, you're eating that. And
Gasp.
I thought you care about your health, but also this, with me being a leaner individual, you're eating that. How are you not like overweight? I can't, if I ate that, I would gain so much weight. Like, I have to eat healthy.
That's a big one. If I
Like,
ate that, I would gain 20 pounds. If I gained
yeah.
that, that's a big one.
So, yeah, just in the opposite can be true. Like, eating unhealthy automatically means that you're going to gain all of this weight. So, I know we mentioned this already in the beginning, but you got to take into account that calories still matter. Calories don't just magically not matter because it's a food that is nutritionally dense and good for you. Just because you have a big salad and you're eating the sweet potatoes and the chicken, it doesn't mean that the calories just are going out the window and it doesn't apply to you. This whole entire concept that we spoke about in the beginning of energy balance, which is what it is, still applies. The calories in still happen when you're eating healthier food. So take that into account. And what can happen a lot of the time when people start to eat healthier is that they consistently will underestimate how much they're eating. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are eating healthier, well, I can't possibly be eating too many calories. I just wanted to throw in this study because they have this one particular study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that obese individuals who underestimated their calorie intake by 47%.
That's huge.
And there are two other studies that I'll cite below as well that have showed similar, but portion sizes still matter regardless of whether or not the food is healthy. Now, where I think this really stems from, this idea that eating healthy equals eating for weight loss, comes from this idea of nutrient density versus calorie density.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, eating more nutrient dense whole foods versus eating an ultra processed diet absolutely can make weight loss easier. And that is due to this concept of nutrient density and calorie density. And I wanted to explain that. If you're thinking about calorie density, that refers to the amount of calories in relation to the total amount of a particular food. So calorie dense foods contain high levels of calories per serving. When you're looking at nutrient density, it refers to the amount of nutrients in relation to the total amount of food. So this is typically measured by the number of calories. Nutrient dense foods contain high levels of nutrients per serving. Now, nutrient dense foods can still be calorically dense.
What?
Think of like nuts, think of seeds, think of which are really, really high in nutrients, even salmon. Salmon is not a leaner piece of meat. It's not a leaner protein source. It is more calorie dense, but it is nutrient dense. So you can have calorie dense foods that are nutrient dense as well. So just because a food is nutrient dense doesn't mean that it's low in calorie density. And I think that that's where people will apply, all of these very nutritious foods, they can't all be calorie dense, because when people think about calorie dense foods, they think about junk food. They think about processed food, which yes, processed food is calorically dense. That's why I mentioned that eating more whole foods can help you be in a calorie deficit, because a lot of whole foods are not calorie dense. If you think about like fruits and vegetables, those are low in calorie density, high in nutrients. So you can eat more of them while eating less calories compared to if you were having a bag of chips. That's a little bit more intuitive. And if you are trying to lose weight, choosing the more whole foods options that are lower in calories can make it easier to adhere to a calorie deficit. But I think that's where this gets misconstrued often, is that people will apply this concept of, nutrient density, and then also think that, yes, these are low in calorie density as well. None of these foods are all low calorie because they all came from the earth or something, or even just it's not in a package.
It sounds like even more like, it's healthy, calories don't matter. Like it's not even a thing that exists because it's a healthy food. Yeah. It's nothing to even think about in that case.
But that's also where I see, you also get this argument that not all calories are created equal, which is a whole rabbit hole that you could go down. But not all foods are created equal. A strawberry obviously is not the same thing as a potato chip. They differ in their nutrients, they differ in their calorie density. Of course, they are not the same. But calories as a whole, you could eat the same amount of calories from junk food as healthy food, but what can you adhere to more? Maybe the whole foods, because they're a little bit more filling. Yeah. So that I think that that's the biggest part that I wanted to explain. I don't think it goes much deeper into that, but just because you're eating healthy, it doesn't mean that you're going to be in this deficit and lose weight. And also, a lot of the times, these healthy foods have a health halo attached to them. So because of how they're labeled, whether it's organic, non-GMO, natural, people assume that that's healthy. And a salad, if you're getting a salad out at a restaurant, you think that that's the healthier choice. Well, oftentimes these salads have very calorically dense dressings on them, and they also have the nuts, and they have the dried fruit and the croutons, and it can really add up. You're not, just because it's a salad doesn't mean that it's better for weight loss. These principles still apply.
The Southwest chicken salad at Cheesecake Factory has like 2,700 or 2,800 calories in it, in a single salad. in a salad. So you're like, oh no, it's healthy. Like I got the healthy option. It's like, oh, okay, that's like 2 days worth of food for a teenager. It's kind of insane. And it comes down to like, it's a Venn diagram. I think a lot of people see things as black and white. It's either this or that. You can eat healthy foods and be in a calorie deficit, but you have to remember, if you're not in a calorie deficit, you're not going to lose weight. Whether it's what you deem healthy or unhealthy or processed or unprocessed. I mean, because look at this dude, Professor Mark Hobbs. Have we talked about him before on this show?
I think so.
I love this example, and it's not a recommendation because I know people are going to hear this and be like, oh, you're telling us to eat junk food to lose weight? No, it was just a perfect example of calorie deficits matter. If you're unfamiliar, Professor Mark Hobbs, he lost over 27 pounds in 10 weeks by eating nothing but processed junk food from what he called a gas station diet. Okay, he was I think the professor of human nutrition at Kansas State University. And essentially what he did for 10 weeks was set up a calorie deficit where he was eating 1,800 calories a day of Hostess cupcakes, Doritos, Oreos, and protein shakes. And over the course of the next 10 weeks, he lost 27 pounds. And this is the even funnier part. Actually, all of the other health metrics he measured also improved. But I think that's more to speak because of the weight loss changes, not the dietary changes. But he did this just to measure out. It's like, hey, these aren't mutually exclusive. And he's not recommending, I'm not recommending anybody do this because, I mean, okay, think about the secondary things. How crappy do you think he felt the day? How do you think his energy and fatigue was? How long do you think that dude spent on the toilet?
And that's not sustainable. So just like eating only gas station foods or only fast foods or only these really ultra processed foods isn't sustainable, only eating the most nutritious and healthy food all of the time, 100% of the time, right? I recommend it be a majority of your diet if you're looking at your diet. But making that the whole, as in I can't have anything else, that is also unsustainable.
Yep.
Sometimes the healthier and better choice for weight loss, people think I'm crazy, is choosing the Oreos over the strawberries. Because when you satisfy that craving, right, you're not going into it like it's this binge because this is this forbidden food you can't have. That's when you do the unthinkable and you have the 2 Oreos and put the sleeve away. Because you've already been eating these whole foods throughout the day. You've eaten your protein, fiber. You're feeling satisfied and you're not feeling this overwhelming hunger that I can recognize this as just a small craving. And I'm going to have the 1 or 2 Oreos and put them down. And I'm still in my calorie deficit. And this allows me to continue because I don't feel this need to eat the whole package next week or the following day. And people think I'm crazy for that. But
no, not at all. Because again, it's thinking in the moment versus, how many times are you going to restrict that? Say, no, I can't have an Oreo. It's dirty. It's bad. It's whatever. And then it's like, who's eating a whole package of Oreos that weekend? The same person who avoided them through the entire week. But even like, again, dude lost 27 pounds eating junk food from a gas station. It's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
A blend works. Black and white. That doesn't really exist in health and nutrition. That's what we're trying to say. So don't pull these out of context and be like, oh, Tony and Marianna told me to go eat Hostess cupcakes. Or Tony and Marianna told me not to. No, shh. Be quiet. That's not what
people
we're saying.
do that all the time, right? And it's so funny. I don't know if you get this. You get this on TikTok often where people go so far past the point you're trying to make and make a completely new one. And like,
it's my favorite thing in the world. It's hilarious.
I can't, when I recommend that deli meat is a great, quick and easy protein source for people to have when they need something on the go.
I feel like people would freak out about that.
And all of a sudden I am giving people recommendations that's going to give them cancer, and that I don't support eating whole foods or any other protein, and that I only recommend deli meat as the only source of protein. I'm like, when did I say that though? Like, when did I say that? It's just funny. I think it's funny.
Yeah, when people like draw a conclusion from something you never even said. They're like, well, if you think this is true, then this must be true. It's like, you said that, not me. That always is the funny one. So that wraps up our list of the top 5 myths when it comes to weight loss, and hopefully that gave you a better understanding of the blend of what this takes. I know we did have some runner-ups, like the beloved fat burning zone in cardio that we've talked about before, like the 12-3-30, the spot reduction myth that you can burn body fat in certain areas of your body, which we'll probably bring up in more episodes to come, or we have before.
How cool would that be if that was true?
I freaking wish. That'd actually be kind of funny. Just pad up my legs with that so I never have to do leg day again and just get shredded upper body and just wear nothing but like sweatpants and jeans for the rest of my life and look great. We can dream in another reality. But that's what we got going on today. Double check down below in the show notes. Enter to win that freaking Peloton treadmill. I don't care if you hate the treadmill, if you'll never use it, get it and sell it. That's what I like. Is that even like, just enter to win? That is a $3,500 treadmill. Just do whatever. Go enter that in the show notes below. You get 5 free entries with code FITSTUFF. We'll put that down below too. We're getting super with it. And we also link all of the studies that we mentioned in today's episode down below because we with it. And you can catch us on Premium. Again, $5 where we do AMAs. Every single Friday you get new episodes.
Which isn't Ask Me Anything.
Oh yeah, should have said that. Ask Me Anything. We answer y'all's questions that you go upvote, ask anything your heart desires. And that'll be this Friday and every Friday after that. So let us know if you guys had questions about today's episode. We hope you had a beautiful start to your week. We'll talk to you guys soon.